Doom: The Dark Ages is one of the most disappointing games I've ever played. It's not that it's a bad game, it's really not. If I were to be objective, it's a solid 7 out of 10 game. What I mean when I say the game is disappointing is that it's worse than the previous entry in the series. Doom Eternal built onto the solid foundation of Doom 2016 and gave us one of the best first-person shooters of all time, while The Dark Ages is just its own thing, which is not a bad thing. Developers should experiment with new mechanics and level design. That is something to be encouraged. And id Software sure did experiment. Dark Ages is practically a combination of mechanics from the original Doom, Sekiro, Drakengard, and the Toho project. It's a miracle that this combination of mechanics works at all. And it says a lot about how talented the devs at id Software are. But nonetheless, this is still a very experimental game that feels rough around the edges. A far cry from Eternal, which was polished to near perfection, if you exclude the extremely annoying technical issues, that is.
1,000 feet below the main deck, I've marked the best access point.
Some of you might say that The Dark Ages is a very different game from Eternal, and I shouldn't compare the two, but I can't do that. The Dark Ages is a part of an established franchise, so I will compare it to the previous entry, and if it is a downgrade in any way, I will complain about it. That is just how I am. Anyway, why do I not like The Dark Ages as much as Eternal? Well, it all comes down to the gameplay, music, and the engine. Yes, I will complain about the graphics engine. The only thing I won't complain about is the story, because I don't really care about the story in a Doom game. Just give me a boomstick, something to shoot, and enough context as to why I'm shooting it, and I'm happy. Anyway, let's discuss the gameplay stuff I don't like. First and foremost, the turret sections. Who decided it was a good idea to put turret sections in a Doom game released in 2025? No. Forget about the Doom part. Who decided it was a good idea to put a turret section in a modern video game? These things belong in a Call of Duty clone from 2011, not a modern game. Seriously, this is actually ridiculous. Dear id, please never put turret sections in any of your future games. It's fucking stupid, okay? Now that we have this out of the way, let's move on to the other stupid design choice, the mech sections. On a first playthrough, these are just a spectacle, no big deal. On repeat playthroughs, these are a pointless waste of time. The mech combat is just the most basic, mindless combat system possible. Literally just spam the punch button until your special move is charged up, and then hit the enemy with that. Sometimes you might have to dodge, but there is practically no skill involved in that either. So, what was the point exactly? To just waste money on useless spectacle missions that are almost universally hated? At least the dragon is a bit less annoying. Yes, the dragon has turret sections, but it is also used as a mode of transport between sections in which you fight on foot. So the dragon sections are a bit better than the mech sections, but I wish they did more with the dragon. Maybe add an ability where you call the dragon for air support or something. As it is, it's just extremely basic. As for the core gameplay, it's interesting. I don't think any FPS game has ever implemented all these mechanics at once, so being as experimental as it is, the gameplay is understandably rough around the edges. The thing that bugs me the most is the ability to go through the entire game with one weapon if you want to, and the fact that switching weapons is actively discouraged. I don't mean that the Eternal or 2016 style of quick switching is discouraged. I mean that the regular switching to a different weapon mid-combat in order to exploit the weaknesses of various enemy configurations is discouraged. Weapon switching is extremely slow, and weapon switching input buffering is non-existent. So switching weapons feels very clunky. Every single weapon can do the job in pretty much every situation. Other games with grounded combat and loads of enemies on screen emphasize weapon utility, and thus they force you to adapt to whatever enemy configuration you have on screen at the moment. You don't have to adapt to anything in the Dark Ages, because the parry-shoot strategy works just fine. Parry as much as you can so you can spam the shield abilities, and then shoot enemies with whatever weapon you like. The game will never punish your choice of weapon. The result is this mindless bullshit you see on screen. The clips used in this video are from my first playthrough, and the difficulty is nightmare. If I can coast through encounters this easily on my first playthrough, where I have no clue what I'm doing, what does this say about the game's skill cap? If the parry-shoot strategy works just fine, there are no movement mechanics with combat application to master, because the devs made sure there weren't any, and no complex, precise inputs to build a muscle memory for, what is there to master after the first 2 playthroughs? Sure, you can experiment with melee and falters on your second playthrough, but there isn't much to figure out. Not having the glory kills also kinda sucks. I understand not giving the fodder enemies glory kill animations, but I wish that at least the super heavies had the old school glory kill animations. They probably spent all their money on the mech sections, so they had no animation budget at the end. I don't know. Speaking of budget, you ain't gonna have a nice experience running this game on a budget PC. That's for sure. The system requirements are astronomical because they are using ray-traced global illumination, which cannot be turned off. They did this because it's easier, faster, and cheaper to develop the game like this, because you don't have to take time to bake lighting and then see the results, all to just scrap it and do something else until the result is satisfactory. Now, the developer gets to save money and time at the expense of you, the user, having to buy a more expensive graphics card to run their game. On top of that, the game is more expensive, because games are just gonna be more expensive now, I guess. Is this fair? Does it in any way sound fair to you? It sure as hell doesn't sound fair to me. Finally, I want to briefly discuss the soundtrack. It's garbage. Compared to Mick Gordon's work, this is straight up garbage. It's just generic corpo metal. No track stands out to me, and I'm never going to listen to the Dark Ages OST outside the game. David Levy and Andrew Herschel did a brilliant job with the Ancient Gods OST. Why didn't they bring them back? I don't know. Maybe they got into a huge fight with them as well. Who knows? The one thing I do know is that Finishing Move are not doing the series justice, and I really hope they contract someone else to make the music for the DLC. Alright, rant over. Bye bye.